This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to episode 23 of Cooking with Grief, the internet's last bastion of hope against the inevitable despair. I'm Chris, and I ate too much pasta before recording, again. So the healthier side of the podcast, my partner in crime, my partner in podcasting, and my partner in our Tuesday evening flamenco classes, it's Chris.
Hi there, is the pasta thing true?
I'm quite a good cook, I think. You know, I used to be a chef and...
Hence the name of this podcast.
Well, in retrospect maybe, yeah. I cannot for the life of me measure a non-abnormal amount of pasta.
Oh, I have a tip for this. So... My method is, it might not work because you always use fresh pasta, but with dried pasta, I pour it out on the plate beforehand, and I put as much on as if somebody was to serve that to me, I'd be disappointed, but without a politeness still have to eat it. Because if it's any more than that, if it's like a decent sized portion, then obviously once you boil it and it absorbs all the water, you end up with like mountains of the stuff. And obviously if you have too little on the plate, because I know some people say it doubles in size, and I really don't think it does.
No.
So, you know, just enough on the plate that if you got it, you'd be like, oh, okay, fine. It's not going to fill me, and I'm going to judge you and, you know, never come round to dinner again, but I won't make a fuss this time.
The sort of amount where immediately after finishing, you'd be like, I could easily eat the same thing again. And then half an hour later, you're like, actually, no, that was just the right amount. Whereas what I did was made double what I needed, lacked the self-discipline to not eat it all, and then have spent the subsequent time sort of just groaning and cradling a sort of Italian food baby.
Oh dear.
Regretting simultaneously everything and nothing. So that's all that's new in my life. How are you?
I am well, thank you. No Italian food babies here.
Good, glad to hear it. Every episode, each of us two Chris's bring two interesting topics we've hoovered up in the week and share them with each other for the very first time. We always say we cover everything from art to science to history to everything in between, but to be honest, we mostly go for ancient Greece, modern China, and existential despair. So Chris, why don't you start us off with your first topic?
Okay, well, I'm going to surprise you by talking about neither modern China or ancient Greece. Or indeed, modern Greece or ancient China.
It can't be done.
Well, let me surprise you. I'm going to talk about the Germans, or as they prefer to be known, the Germans. Specifically, so in 1920s, there was a German architect called Hermann Sergel. Presumably he liked to be known as Hermann the German. His grand idea was to drain the Mediterranean Sea, by blocking the Atlantic Ocean.
That is a grand plan.
Very grand. As you're probably aware, it wasn't ever enacted. I don't know if the reasons given were because that's fucking stupid, Herman, what's wrong with you? But basically, so it turns out, you know, the whole reason, well, the excuse the Nazis gave for invading their neighbours was because they wanted living space. They call it Lebensraum. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it at all. You did more German than
Lebensraum.
Okay, thank you. That's your education paying off already. Even before the Nazis got in power, apparently the Germans were feeling quite hemmed in, I guess, and they wanted space to expand. So Hermann the German had an idea of doing it in a sort of pacifistic way. So instead of invading your neighbours, make more space. And the idea would be you build a massive dam across, you know, the Strait of Gibraltar to block out the Atlantic. And then you build another one across the Dardanelles to hold out the Black Sea. And then you also, you know, do some engineering works around like the Suez and across from Sicily to Tunisia, just to further build up some barriers. And that would lower the sea level in the Mediterranean by 200 metres and freeing up all that lovely land for people to move into.
I mean, it's an interesting interpretation of pacifism.
Yes, and obviously any fishing village or seaside town suddenly becomes completely redundant.
Perhaps it's not the best idea in the world, but it's better than blowing up the moon or starting a Nazi colony on Jupiter or whatever else they had planned later.
Yeah, the idea was you could generate lots of energy as well using like a hydroelectric dam, the one blocking Gibraltar. And apparently the idea was, because all the European countries would have to cooperate, it would be a pacifistic way of getting them on board. Of course, they also wanted to join Europe to Africa into what they'd call either Atlantropa or Eurafrica. And presumably, with it being the 1920s, that wasn't a let's all be friends. It was probably more we can take as much minerals as humanly possible this way without having to bother with boats.
Germany coming off the back of the end of World War One, were they in a position to make these sort of demands? And surely they would have seen it as that would only tip Europe's hand for World War Round 2.
Honestly, I think if any plan involves blocking the Strait of Gibraltar and joining the Mediterranean, we can assume they haven't thought these things through.
And also, like, you say, okay, he's an architect, so the sort of that side of it he's got covered. Was he in any position to sort of start putting this into place? And at what point did they knock it on the head?
Well, he apparently advocated it all the way through until his death in the 1950s. So even after World War II, he was still like, no, guys, this is a good idea. His Wikipedia page doesn't mention any buildings that he actually designed and were built.
Oh, my favourite architects are always the self-appointed ones.
Yeah, well, he's written several articles about architecture. He had a degree in architecture. But, in terms of actual legacy, it seems quite barren. Why were they so concerned with extra space? Because, I mean, Germany is quite big. And quite a lot of it is, even now, still pretty empty. Like, obviously you've got like the massive cities and stuff, but like outside of there's still a fair amount of German countryside. Why were they all so obsessed with like expansion? Why am I asking you? It's just like the whole like idea was like it was a utopian goal to solve the problems of European civilization, but it all basically revolved around like making it easier to conquer Africa.
Well, it's a tale as old as colonialism itself.
Exactly. One of the reasons that Herman was so obsessed with this was because he thought he needed to remain competitive with the Americans. And apparently Asia would forever remain a mystery to Europeans. So it wasn't worth looking there.
I think Marco Polo might have something to say about that.
Imagine how different the EU would have looked if it turns out we were just massive... I don't know what the word is. What's the opposite of a seaside town? Like, just suddenly just lots of, like, far less coastline than they were used to.
Also, imagine how disgusted he'd be, given that he considered Asia to be a mystery. Just sushi is all over the place. Just available in every petrol station, every little shop.
He'd go mental. But he's dead. So he can't.
You can put that on the poster. He'd go mental, but he's dead.
And I think on that note, we're done. Okay, so with my first topic away, over to you.
Well, I'll start with a question, as always. Chris, have you ever done anything shady to get ahead in your career?
Nothing particularly shady. I've just been very lucky with interviews, I'll be honest. For example, getting into university, my interviewer realised he was from the same town I was, so instead of asking me questions about thermodynamics, like apparently he asked every other student, he just asked me various questions about the town we both were from. And then when I got my job, again, I somehow looked through the interview because there was a bit where, it was this engineering technical interview, and he asked why there were two of these components, and I desperately tried to bluff my way through, thinking of some things I'd seen on a YouTube video the day before, which constituted my preparation. And, I was trying to think of how these components interact with each other, and then eventually, after letting me ramble for a bit, he was like, it's in case one breaks. Oh. But somehow I got the job anyway, so like I say, I've not been shady, I've just been incredibly lucky.
Well, someone who did do something of a sort of shady prank to get ahead in his career was Michaelangelo, because in 1496 he...
the artist and not the Ninja Turtle.
I think that's a fairly strong assumption to make. But yes, just so we're on the record, the artist.
Okay, carry on.
So in 1496 he was just another struggling artist. He had talent and passion, just not the fame to shift his stuff at whatever form of IKEA they had back in the day. But because classical sculptures were way more popular than contemporary stuff at the time, he decided to forge a classic sculpture and then artificially age it, bury it, and then he had a friend, an art dealer named Baldassare del Milanese, quote-unquote, discover it and reap the rewards, and it worked to a certain extent because it was sold to an Italian cardinal called Raffaella, another human, not Ninja Turtle, Riario. And although it was discovered to be a forgery, it was of such a high quality and so similar to the classics that it turned out to be a positive thing, because it A, showed that the young Mickey-Angel, as he was never known, that he A, had a lot of talent, but B, because classical sculptures were so in vogue that people who could realistically do forgeries were, highly sought after. So he was invited to study in Rome, and it was a move that proved to be the making of him, essentially. And I guess the moral of the story is sometimes just cheat and blag your way through it, and it turns out right, like you in your interview.
Exactly. Sometimes it's best to just bluff. I mean, like I say, it was the making of him, and it was the making of the Sistine Chapel, I think.
Yes.
Is that him? Right, artist? Good.
Yeah, he did Sistine Chapel and...
Oh, David.
And David, yeah.
Yeah.
Arguably the most famous penis in the world.
Yeah, that's it's either him or Rasputin.
I think maybe more people have seen David's.
That is true. The whole thing about art is what's really weird, like, because obviously instead of just deciding whether or not you like a piece of art, and that's that, it's like the value of it is so weirdly, like, related to what everyone else agrees that it is. So, like when somebody finds a painting in the garage, and then it's like sold for £5, and then it turns out it's actually a Rembrandt, and it's been sold for like 2 million. And it's like, well, surely it was either a good painting or it wasn't.
I think there's a case to be made for if a painting is authentically done by someone of historical import, then it is worth more because of its creator's relevance in history. Was it that Picasso recently that sold for $500 million?
Was it not Da Vinci?
One of them.
The one that got sold to the Louvre.
Some old painting turned up.
Yeah.
First of all, I wouldn't pay that. That's silly money.
That's fair.
There are so many other things I could buy. But it's obviously worth more, not necessarily because it's a better painting, but because it's historically relevant, and also it's worth more, I guess, to collectors or museums.
Did you know that art is often used for money laundering? Because there's no, like, intrinsic value. And apparently, in Switzerland, there is a warehouse which is just full of crates, which supposedly, and apparently, as far as anybody is aware, are genuinely full of, like, nearly priceless artworks. Again, with it being Switzerland, probably a lot of them were deposited by Nazis, having been stolen. Apparently, they're sold between various investors, but nobody ever takes delivery of them or anything. They're just used like a sort of stock exchange. So you have this crate, there's this massive warehouse full of hundreds of crates or thousands of crates, each full of X amount of artworks. One person will buy it from another and then sell it to a third party who then sells it on, who then buys another. None of them are ever moved out of this warehouse.
So all we need is a sort of philanthropic billionaire to buy the lot, but then actually make good on the sale and donate them to a museum.
And we are not that billionaire.
He says bitterly, not being a billionaire.
You know how, like, Michaelangelo, so basically Michaelangelo was a bit, well, not a fraud, because he was obviously talented, but technically a fraud in that he, faked the authenticity of his art. And then Da Vinci was just a genius who just could never actually see anything through to completion. He had loads of, like, unfinished art, and his stuff always took years longer than, like, the people who paid him expected it to. Did you know the Last Supper fresco? The reason why it's all crumbling and whatever is because apparently you're supposed to paint it whilst it's all still wet, and you get it done nice and fast, and then it sort of soaks into the paint, sort of soaks into the plaster, then it stays. But Da Vinci doesn't work like that, so he was just like, I'll let it dry and then I'll paint on top of it. And it just flaked massively, and that's why they spend like hundreds of thousands of pounds every year just trying to keep it like in one piece. Also, what I liked about, the Michelangelos and the Da Vinci's and all that was back in them days, like artwork. No, they were artists, but then they were also like, so they make priceless pieces of art one day, like the Mona Lisa and David and whatnot, and then like on another day they make siege weapons. It's like one day Mona Lisa, next day trebuchet.
Yeah, like a lot of the sort of polymaths are like that. So like the founding fathers of the United States are also like scientists and can like speak 6 languages, and it seems like they sort of wrote the Constitution on a spare wet Wednesday when they couldn't be doing like experiments with electricity. And it's like, you know, we don't sort of diversify skills that way anymore.
Yeah, well, I think it's that weird thing when everybody, humanity in general, knew less, it sort of was easier to learn a bit about everything, or to be sort of like at the, you know, it's like, so when Isaac Newton obviously had to like come up with the theory of gravity, but that was sort of like the first step. And now to ever learn something new, you have to like learn everything that Isaac Newton discovered, and then like subsequently everyone learned what he discovered something new. Then you have to learn everything he learned or discovered, learn everything his successor discovered, and only then are you ready to add to humanity's knowledge. So you tend to, it becomes a lot harder to reach that level of skill in multiple things.
Yeah, you can see further by standing on the backs of giants, but the downside is...
Which was also a Isaac Newton quote.
It was.
And on the £2 coin. And an Oasis album.
Any more?
Apparently he said it partly because it sounded like very grandiose, you know, and sort of that semi-modest thing, you know, I can only see so far by standing on the shoulders of giants. But also apparently his great rival in whatever century London it was, 17th century, I think, London, was Robert Hooke, who was apparently a bit of a dwarf. And so it was also a little dig at his... I don't know if he was actually a dwarf or if he was just short, like where we had dwarfism, or whether he was
clarified it with a bit of a dwarf.
Well, it's just because I just remember the teacher who told me this story, who was Scottish, and when he told us this in physics way back when, he was like, "So he's a wee dwarf." It's just that phrase is stuck in my head for like for the last decade.
So that's the end of my first topic. Chris, what have you got for your second one?
Okay, well, we are called Cooking with Grief, and we've already tackled European colonialism today. So I'm going to combine the two together, and hopefully as a former chef you'll appreciate this, and talk about why European food tastes like it does. I'm sure you've heard the joke about, you know, the English conquered the entire world looking for spices and then refused to use them in any of our cooking.
Yeah, and I think it's broadly true.
Yes, but there is a reason for that. As we literally just mentioned like 10 seconds ago, Europeans sort of, you know, got really weirdly obsessed with spices to the point where they were like willing to commit genocide just to make the food taste different. Europeans sailed around the world getting spices. Obviously, the spice trade became a massive deal. The Portuguese especially, they did a lot of trading between the east coast of Africa and India, all trying to gather up more spices. And obviously, people used them. First, obviously, it was only like royalty and the rich, the aristocratic class. And so, obviously, spicy food was, you know, like a kilo of spice would be worth like the equivalent of thousands of pounds. That's thousands of pounds of money for any Americans being like, a kilo's not £1,000. What are you talking about? At first, it was all about the rich who could have it. But then, obviously, the more places the better developed your trading routes and everything are, the more spices you can get back to Europe. The more common it becomes, the cheaper it becomes. And so, after a while, instead of it only being restricted to the rich and powerful, it became like more common. Like, you know, anybody with like just, you know, like the middle class sort of could afford spices. And so, as Europeans are wont to do, snobbery kicked in, and they decided that they didn't like spices anymore now that everyone could have them. And so what they decided was that food should taste like itself, but more. Now, switching to modern times, there was a study done recently that like analysed the actual flavour molecules of various foods from around the world, and they found that in Indian cooking, the molecules, you know, the tastes that each individual flavour had were very different, and that's what made the overall flavour. Whereas in European food, it tended to be stuff that amplified the flavours. You know, so you put stuff on meat, like gravy, to make it taste meatier. And that was all because the European, like, upper class were like, everybody can have spicy food now. We've decided that meat should taste extra meaty. So they started looking for, herbs and stuff like that would bring out the flavour.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there you go. There's some cooking. Would you like some grief? I suppose there was grief as well. We briefly mentioned European colonialism and genocide. So, we finally lived up to the title. It's only taken 23 episodes.
Yeah, almost an entire year's worth of podcasting, and we've finally met our self-imposed remit.
Exactly. And just in case you're wondering, this all happened in like the 1600s. That's when cuisine of Europe changed from sort of spice-based to meaty.
The quintessential British dish, I guess, would be a roast dinner. It's like nothing is too overpowering.
Exactly. It's really nice, but yeah, it is. Oh, bland's the wrong word, but yeah, there are no powerful flavours.
Meat and various things that can support the taste of meat, which is most things. Even fish and chips doesn't exactly blow your brain out.
You'd hope.
Well, yeah, it depends on the fish. If it was what's that Japanese fish that...
Fugu.
Fugu, yeah. That, potentially could blow your brains out, but I tend not to have that at my local chippy. I'm pretty much only a cod guy.
Put that on your tombstone.
Yeah, the world's most, bland superhero cod guy. Although, have you seen that thing on Twitter, and it's like lots of people who go to places like Chipotle and like get like rice bowls and then start kicking off that they found a leaf in there. And because they don't know what a bay leaf is.
I have an issue with bay leaves. Just anytime you put something on the food that you're not supposed to eat, and it just ends up being like... I mean, bay leaves obviously are like fairly common, so you learn not to eat them quite early. But, sometimes, especially if you go to like a foreign cuisine place, and, you're just there and you're like, some of it looks half edible, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I could eat this, but I'm not sure if I should eat this. And you don't want to look like a barbarian. And then you just get anxiety and leave the restaurant.
Without paying. Yeah, I always struggled. So, in China, obviously a delicacy is chicken's feet.
Obviously.
Well, okay, maybe not.
Actually saying that. Apparently when my mum was a kid, my granddad used to get chicken feet because they're also a West Indian delicacy. So they are a thing. As in, like a worldwide thing, not
yeah.
super weird.
I guess, it makes sense to use every part of the animal and all that. But I think delicacy it's just the wrong word for it because...
Too strong a word.
Well, because...
not delicacy, but yeah.
Because, I'd go out for dinner with friends and they'd present the chicken feet as this is something you've got to try. We'd be very honoured if you tried our... this place is great for chicken feet.
You sure they were just fucking with you? Like, here comes the white guys.
Well,
give them some chicken feet. Tell them it's so special.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I fell for the 100-year-old egg, which is where they pickle eggs and then bury them for a while and then dig them up and then...
For 100 years, or...?
No, I think they're just called 100 years eggs. I think you'd just be eating dead worms and soil at that point. And it is the most disgusting thing I've ever eaten in my life, but it's presented to you as a Beijing delicacy. And you've got to, with all eyes on you, try to eat this thing that every atom of your being is saying you should not eat, and later every atom of your bowels definitely agrees with your being.
I got a friend who's ethnically ambiguous because he just never actually... he enjoys the fact that nobody knows exactly where he's from, but he's like half East Asian, but he never actually says which country, and he enjoys the fact that nobody knows because it gives him an air of mystery. But he's very proud of the fact he'll eat any sort of like street food, like East Asian street food. Like squid on a stick and all that stuff. Apart from one time, he bought what he thought was a sausage on a stick type thing. I suppose it was of a sort, but he started eating it and it turns out to be a donkey's intestine or something. And he said it tasted like literal shit.
Oh.
He said he's never eaten something that's caused him to instantly vomit until then.
Yeah, it doesn't sound... ideal. There's no amount of spice that's perking up
no, there's not
a donkey's gut. There are some things that it doesn't matter whether you have them with gravy or with spice. They're just avoid
nice.
them.
Cooking with grief pro tip: avoid anything that looks like it might be an anus.
For eating. Well, for nutritional purposes anyway.
What?
What I'm saying is, I don't want to preclude anyone's...
Oh.
Where am I going with this?
I don't know. Down a dead end.
I don't want us to come out as a 100% anti-anus podcast. Just in terms of nutrition.
Right, well, that's the poster sorted.
Where are you putting these posters? You keep talking about posters.
Just been sticking them on people's windows.
Right.
Can you agree we're going offline now?
You're getting us banned from every butcher in the country.
It's like, well, Twitter's not really working out for us, so I think
we're going old school.
I'm going to take this, yeah. I'm going to take this to a 90s Battle of the Bands style.
Right, okay, well, if you're looking for quotes on the poster, just...
Not necessarily 100% anti-anus. That is a sentence I never thought I would say in my entire life.
They're useful, okay, in various things.
Did you know that a starfish eats from its anus?
It's a hell of a party trick.
Same hole.
Oh.
Which I think is called a cloaca.
That's what birds have, that it's a one-use shoot.
Oh, then no, because birds definitely have mouths. I've seen birds.
That's the most confident I've ever heard you sound on this podcast.
There are many things I don't know, but there's the one thing I do know.
Yeah, let me just check on Wikipedia. Yeah, birds have mouths.
Okay, so I think we can rule out whatever I just said. What were we even talking about? Yeah, don't put spice on your anus. There we go. Oh, sorted.
Gastronomically.
No, just ever.
What about for a sexy... No.
Oh,
where am I going with this?
Surely. You know what? I've had enough. I'm out.
Okay, well, it's been fun.
Yeah, and so ends Cooking with Grief. We made it to 23 episodes. It's been a wild ride, and goodbye.
We're ending on a bum note.
Whee! Okay, I don't have high hopes, but please rescue us from this pit of misery we've somehow managed to dig once again.
In my defence, you led us down
this don't say it.
Narrow path. Chris, moving swiftly on. I want you to imagine a hypothetical situation.
I can do that.
You've fallen on hard times, and you've decided on a new career as a burglar.
Okay.
How do you go about it? Who do you rob? Who do you target? What sort of things are you looking for?
I take a leaf out of that. There was that burglar in Liverpool who... Liverpool were playing in the Champions League in Italy or somewhere, so he knew Steven Gerrard wouldn't be in, so he went and broke into Stevie G's house. I mean, he was like...
I had to make sure it was live.
Yeah, he was just like, Steven Gerrard, currently in Milan, probably not going to be at home.
Yeah, that's sound reasoning, and you'd probably be fairly successful at that.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how that compares to something that burglars did in medieval Egypt and Persia. They had a tactic that involved casing a house before they robbed it to see if it was worth... Well, essentially, if people were in or out, by sending in a turtle with a lit candle on its shell.
A ninja turtle? Do you mean a turtle or a tortoise? Because if it was a turtle, presumably it just like struggles to swim, just like dehydrates and dies. Just outside the porch.
Yeah, that's more of a mafia threat.
Next day they come out and just be like, why the fuck is there a turtle here? Especially if it was one of those, like, giant sea turtles. I'd be like, what the fuck?
Just beached on a front porch, covered in candle wax, going, fuck! Okay, the article I read did say turtle, but you've held my hand as we've walked through the logic of this. It must have been a tortoise.
Okay, carry on.
Assuming they were robbing houses on land, which, in my experience, is where the vast majority of houses tend to be.
That is also true.
Okay, by sending in a tortoise... with a lit candle on its shell.
Okay.
The theory being, if people were in, they'd notice a tortoise with a lit candle on its shell, and they'd probably say something like, fucking hell, it's a tortoise with a candle on its back.
Yeah.
Or, this isn't the birthday cake I ordered. Or, everyone down, this tortoise has got a bomb. And if they weren't in, then the burglars would good to... burgle.
Yeah.
Yeah, as burglars do. Unlike buglers who bugle
Yeah, that they wouldn't be very good at sneaking in like. That's my Beagle impression, by the way.
Yeah, I assume as much from the context. You weren't just having a stroke. Hopefully. What an unsympathetic podcast this would be if I put this out and you're just clutching at your chest on the other side of the line.
Yeah. Anyway, so Ninja Turtle and or Tortoise goes in with its candle. Somebody goes, oh shit, there's a turtle and or tortoise with a candle on its back.
Yeah, expressing both possibilities every single time. Oh shit, is that a turtle? No, it must be a tortoise because we're on land, because we're in a house. I don't know, I have heard people have been using turtles. Well, why would they use a turtle?
Or if they were just like, yeah, it's a turtle and it's a turtle with a candle on its back. It must mean that there's burglars about. And they're like, no, that's a tortoise with a candle on its back. Oh, that's okay, let's go to bed.
No, a tortoise on its back is an incredibly lucky thing, a sign of favour from the gods. We shall welcome it in and, I don't know, make it into soup or turn it into an ashtray or whatever. What would you do?
Yeah. So then what happened? Oh, they robbed your house, that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
What did they do? What was their supply of tortoise and or turtles? Just because,
they had one.
I was going to say, because sure you use it, someone's saying you're like, oh, I'm not getting that back.
Well, if no one's in and they rob the place, they can just scoop it. They can just scoop it up on the way back.
I mean, if people are in, they're like, oh shit, there's a tortoise here. You can't just go in and be like, sorry, I love a tortoise here.
From the bushes, I was planning to rob your house, but you're in. Can I have my tortoise back, please? It's a turtle.
Be like, oh, there he is. He's a slippery bastard when he wants to be.
Yeah, sorry, I was walking me turtle.
Tortoise and turtle.
It's a New York toidle now. Hey, I was walking me toidle. But obviously I was walking him in the dark, so I had
a candle on him.
A candle on his back.
Don't want him to get run over by a passing chariot.
Yeah. But I had him on a lead, but he slipped out of my grasp and pegged it into your house. Can I have me pet turtle back? Also, nice telly. Sorry, nothing.
Also, have you seen a hair around here? Because I had one of those too.
Aesop, will you stop trying to rob us?
But yeah, no, seriously, like, what was this? I assume you have no idea. but like, yeah, like, how many oh god, I'm saying it now, turtles.
Toidles.
How many turtles are there out there? Like how many houses could you potentially rob in one night? Like, how many could you carry with you at any one time? Like, why? I don't know why I'm so
What do you think Why would I have that information? I don't know, maybe they work in teams and one guy's the robber guy and the other guy's the turtle guy and he's basically a mobile pet shop who's sort of fallen in with a dodgy crowd. And he's sort of, I don't know, maybe got a wagon full of, I don't know, things you want a 12. He can carry 12 with him. But then they split the profits 3 ways with a haberdasher who's going to supply him with the candles. Is that what? No. Candlestick maker. No, they make the candlestick. Who makes candles?
Oh, Chandler.
A chandler. Right, what does a haberdasher
That is such a useless haberdashery. Why do I know that? Anyway, haberdashery is like stitching and stuff like that. Again, why do I know this?
Yeah, why do you know, like, sort of medieval shops?
Yeah, weirdly, despite not knowing much at all, I apparently have an in-depth knowledge of town planning in medieval times.
Yeah, oh, well, I'll pop by the grocer and then the Fletcher because of my arrows. I've got to pick my arrows up.
And off to a farrier to get my horseshoes. Oh yeah, the other thing is I've seen tortoises move. Turtles. And they're not particularly fast, so you have to be very patient. It takes like 3 steps, stops, gets bored, retreats into its shell. Just sounds like how do you direct a turtle? Turtle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not like dogs, I don't think. Like, they're not that responsive to commands, as far as I'm aware. Again,
you can punt them further than you can dogs. Maybe they just bung it through a window and
what, like Mario Kart, just throw it,
and see if it comes out again. I don't.
Yeah, honestly, I think this was. I mean, sorry, robbers of medieval Egypt and/or Persia. I think you said both.
I did.
I am taking umbrage with your plan of action. I don't care how successful you were. I know better.
Yeah, but with the benefits of modern burglary.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder what the modern equivalent would be. Actually, no, to be fair, you don't need a modern equivalent. I think if a tortoise walked into my flat with a candle on its back, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Maybe the fire risk could be
that's
more
a
these
point.
days.
Well, no, back then everything was made out of wood, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess, but I'd rather have a wooden floor than a carpet.
Also, just imagine like a candle on a tortoise walking into a haberdashery. Disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you've made me think about the story more than just reading the headline and moving on and thinking that'll do, how did they attach it?
I don't know. Maybe you had to put like
melt it a bit first and then let the wax reharden.
That would work. But then you run the risk of it just like sloughing off.
These guys were idiots.
I was going to say, though, you could, like, put, like, a sort of, you know, like a candlestick and then some sort of belt-like device going around. I mean, I don't know if a tortoise has a waist as such, but, like...
And then you're now splitting the profits 4 ways with a leather maker who has to make custom belts for your 12 turtles.
The leather maker, also known as a tanner.
How the fuck... Why do you know so much about fuck all? I mean, I know fuck all about fuck all, but you know loads
I've
about
dedicated
fuck all.
my life to knowing as much as possible about the worst, like, least useful things.
Did you just play, like, Rome Total War or Medieval Total War for too long?
Yeah, I didn't even bother invading any, like, neighbouring countries. I just built a lovely little town.
Invested in your ironmongers.
Oh, I need to rethink my priorities.
No, I think you need to do a classics degree, mate. Or a history or something. Like, you need to make use of all this knowledge.
Or found a town in medieval.
Or found a town, yeah.
I should take this to, like, the local council and be like, aha, I've sorted out the congestion problem. It's like, how? Narrow, windy streets that only, like, horses can fit down. That's a terrible idea.
Cobbled roads.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea. How does that help at all? Aha, but it opens up a lovely space for you to put all your tanning shops.
We will need quite an extensive terrarium, though.
Oh, what? Sorry?
Isn't that like an aquarium but for turtles?
Oh, I don't know, but yes.
See,
would a terrapin also work?
I mean, I think we've established that none of it fucking work. So yeah, sure, we'll have chuck terrapins in there in case they've got a moat.
We need something that's as good on land as it is in water.
Penguins, oh no, way, they're not great on land.
No.
And more conspicuous as a...
To be fair, that's what you're going for, though.
Yes, that's
Holy
true,
shit,
yeah.
There's something that I've never seen that looks kind of like a bird, but definitely doesn't look like it belongs in the desert.
And someone's...
with a candle on it.
Strapped it up with candles. I mean, admittedly, of all the creatures they could have chosen, I think the turtle / tortoise / terrapin is the easiest one to affix a candle.
That is true.
The shell is nature's candlestick holder.
Yes.
In a way that fur isn't.
That is true.
And that is what we've learned.
I think we've learned a lot.
I think we've learned I need to choose my subjects more carefully.
No, this is perfect for me. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, who knew that this would lead you into your area of expertise?
Like, unknown. There's that thing where, like, people say you had to do some, like, bullshit at work once about, like, personal development, and it was like, I believe it was called the Johari window, which is the things people know about you, like the strengths and stuff people know about you, the strengths that you have that other people don't know about. And then one of the things was the strengths that you have that even you don't know about. And I feel like medieval town planning fits rather nicely into that. So I'm going to take that back to work with me and go tell HR.
Right, okay, and I'm sorry for your demotion.
Hey pals, make sure you keep listening after the outro,
because there's a message from some fellow podcasters about their podcast, which we think you'll really enjoy. Well, that's all we've got time/patience/inclination for this week, so thank you for listening to episode 23 of Cooking with Grief. We'll be back next time with 4 brand new topics to delight and, I guess, in all honesty, disappoint your ears.
Yep.
I've been Chris.
I too have been Chris, but not the same Chris.
No, we insist on being different Chris's, and we'll be back next time, same place, but obviously because it's a podcast, then you decide both the time and the place, and if both the time and the place are the same, then we'll be back same time, same place. If not, there'll be different times or places.
Yes, well wrapped up.
Thanks, concise as ever. Bye.
Bye, yeah, nailed it.
Always do, mate. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cooking with Grief. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to recommend it to a friend. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email cookingwithgrief@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter. That's @cookingwithgrief. If you'd like to hear more episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you've got the time, then it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. I'm Swanson, host of the TV Tuners podcast. Every week on TV Tuners, me and my co-hosts, Keo Rain,
Swanson, I need water.
and Stairmaster, review the latest in TV, discuss news, trailers, and even find time to play some fun games. Right now, we're working overtime to cram as much TV knowledge into our brains as possible. Isn't that right, guys?
Swanson, we've been here for 24 hours. We need to get out of here.
Not until you answer who Norm is.
He's Fraser's brother.
Wrong. You get the shock. Check out TV Tuners, available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or any of the podcatchers of your choice.